Thank you to the Patreons for supporting this channel. As someone who grew up in the early 2000s and witnessed in real time the launch of things like YouTube and the social media boom, dined under the stained glass lamps at Pizza Hut, traded Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon cards on the playground, and consumed a life-threatening amount of strangely dyed food items, I can't escape this feeling that everything has changed. You could chalk it up to childhood nostalgia, or the realization of time floating along, or maybe even a growing disdain for the systems at play and finally aging up into the world to see the bigger picture. I just don't think that's the case. It seems like throughout my childhood, the world was going in a specific direction, and at some point, that force was just stopped and sent down a completely different rabbit hole. Trying to pinpoint an exact moment this shift occurred seems impossible. I guess one of the best places to start is Hollywood. I remember being thoroughly engulfed in the Harry Potter franchise as a child. Games, books, candy, toys. If it had a wizard on it, I wanted it. There were several franchises that ate up all of our minds at the time, and while Harry Potter was probably the first franchise I really remember loving as a child, a close second had to be Spider-Man.
That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
And with the Raimi films also coming out around that time, I was primed to grow into a lifelong comic book nerd. Luckily for me, my stepdad was already a full-blown geek, and it just so happened that my school was trying a new schedule, where we'd only have class for half a day on Wednesdays, the day my stepdad also had off. So with the remainder of our day left, we'd just hang out. He'd show me old movie franchises that he loved, like Indiana Jones and Ghostbusters, Star Wars, or Rambo, and I would latch on to these series, quickly becoming a fan. When new movies came out, we would frequently go watch them, like Batman Begins or Prisoner of Azkaban. In hindsight, it felt a lot like a generational crossover. He'd grown up on these franchises and passed them along to me. Now we're getting our own to share, like Harry Potter and these new superhero films. So imagine our elation when in May of 2008, we would see the release of a brand new Indiana Jones movie and an Iron Man movie. And so we went and saw both of these movies in theaters. And for both of these movies, we had a vastly different experience. Iron Man was amazing. We both loved it. It felt gritty like Batman Begins, but still had this charm to it like the Raimi films that felt true to both Tony Stark and Marvel. Getting up as I normally do once the credits roll, my stepdad tells me to sit back down. He'd heard from a coworker that there's a special ending credit scene, so we sit down. Never having sat through the entire credit sequence in the movie theater, I realized how long they actually were. So I figured whatever was at the end of this had better be good. And it actually was. The ending scene with Nick Fury and inviting Iron Man to the Avengers opened up this whole can of worms and excitement for what other great stories could be told. It was going to be a franchise with more heroes on the way. I was really excited to see how they'd expand on this mega franchise. Would we get Galactus in the future? Kang? What if those X-Men movies that have been coming out end up crossing over with it? I was simply overjoyed with how fresh and new this all seemed to be. I was once again ready to eat up another franchise. Now, on the other side of the spectrum was Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. There was a bit of a different experience between me and my stepdad. I remember him walking out just as disappointed as me, seeing one of your favorite series brought back to life and smashed in front of you. Little did I know that that would be a constant feeling in the future. The whole movie felt off. It seemed like it was brought back solely for the point of being able to say, hey, we brought it back. Wasn't that cool? While entirely missing the point of what made the franchise so drawing in the first place. I don't know, something just felt off. I remember an incredibly heavy toy rollout with this movie as well. As I walked the toy aisle between the Go-Go Crazy Bones, the Air Hog Havoc Helis, that new Batmobile, I saw that shitty whip. I felt like I was watching something I loved get its corpse dug up and paraded around, all to make a quick buck. This wasn't uncommon and still isn't today. Literally everything that can be marketed towards kids will have cheap plastic garbage made for them. I mean, most of the 80s cartoons were built solely off of the principle of selling toys, but it was the first time that I ever noticed it. Fast forward to the present day, and we have a 5th Indiana Jones movie that did the same song and dance. That little Marvel thing that I was so excited for is now up to 32 films, with another 8 shows that you just have to catch up on. That should have been the dream, right? And it was, for a while, before everything became so monotoned. Babe, wake up. It's time for your yearly Marvel rollout. Babe, wake up. It's time to bring another franchise back from the dead. Babe, wake up. It's time for you to add a cute creature in a film to sell toys. Babe, wake up. It's time to sit through the post credits. There's been a growing sentiment that Hollywood is running out of ideas, and from a surface level, it is very hard to argue. Anytime something is mildly popular, it'll get mass-produced to extinction, or some old IP will get dug up solely for, hey, remember this thing points? It used to be cute, but now it seems all the Hollywood blockbusters are being mass-produced to appeal to the widest variety of people, making everything feel ultimately stale. You can't stray too far into the source material or you may alienate casual viewers. Can't have a self-contained story. Everything has to be this huge spectacle. Don't even get me started on the commodification of all this. You want to talk about cheap plastic garbage geared towards kids? We've got that for adults now, in every imaginable thing they could possibly want. Pick your fucking brand because there's tons of them, most of them owned by the same company. Crock pots, aprons, cat collars, chopsticks, you name it, they'll slap your favorite IP on it. It's so draining going into a store like Box Lunch anymore. Truly a monument to the whole trend of this is a forever IP. Remember this thing? Yeah, we're gonna milk it to death with the most mundane merch imaginable. Which brings me into my second point. Everything is so boring to look at.
That's disgusting!
Great balls of fire. Guess who just crawled out the Muffin Mire that can make you trust a motherfucking liar?
There's a reason why people have been so drawn to these Y2K aesthetics, like Frutiger and its mini spin-offs. They're memorable, visually appealing, and stuck out in a sea of other designs. Even exploring old Angel Fire pages has a certain air of excitement to it that you will never find on a modern web page today. There's no more sticking out in a sea of designs, there's just the sea. For example, I was talking to a friend about old Lunchables, specifically the dessert pizza ones. I was mentioning how I'd love the dessert pizzas, but I don't think they make them anymore because I can never find them. I did a little Google search and saw they do in fact still make them, but this packaging is horrendous compared to the 2000s packaging. Like, I'm not crazy, right? Not even just from a personal perspective, but this is objectively a worse design for a product geared towards children. Like, this one looks like something I would see on my grandma's Metamucil. Another example. Fierce Cola competitors Pepsi and Coke. This is their 2000s design. Pepsi has this rich blue. The logo is off-centered and the name is going vertically. The can also features this almost ice cube design to it. Coke, on the other hand, is sporting this shiny red can, with the label also vertical, but it has these caramel lines running across the bottom, with this floaty, almost bubbly wave pattern to it. Both are incredibly simple in design, but are both uniquely their own style. I don't even have to mention the cherry lineup that these guys had, because these are some of the most memorable soft drink designs of all time. Fast forward to today, however, and do you want the red can or would you like the blue can? That is basically the only difference you can make between the two. There's almost no attempt to stand out in a crowd aside from this color scheme and logo. I feel like this is why my eye is so heavily drawn to things like Mountain Dew. That, and I'm a fucking gamer. I mean, at least there's something going on there. At least Mountain Dew treats me like I can comprehend more than just some logo and a color scheme. It's also a big part of why I think things like Liquid Death get so popular. In a sea of bland corporate BS on shelves, if you can manage to get that shelving space with them and look different, people are going to be intrigued. Bonus points if you actually make a good product. I could not fathom anyone preferring these minimalist designs on our products. So who are they for? Am I just looking way too deeply into something as mundane as the packaging our food comes in? Something most people probably don't even bat an eye at? Maybe I just need to go outside, get off the internet for a little while, and fuck me. This homogenized look has even bled into architecture. Remember the iconic red roof McDonald's used to have? The Adobe styling of Taco Bell, that pizzeria feeling of Pizza Hut, or the sunroom in Wendy's? Gone are those days. Now they are all these sleek, boxy monoliths to fast food, painted gray, white, black, or whatever the most drab color they could find. The insides do not get much better either. My McDonald's before its remodel used to have a genuinely cozy vibe for a McDonald's. Now it is absolutely sterile, just like how all fast food restaurants now feel. I'm not asking for rainforest cafe levels of ambiance, but the environment that's been crafted here is just depressing. And when your food is already depressing enough, choosing to eat in an environment like this is horrible. It's like it's been crafted to be the most cold, uncomfortable place to eat a meal in. Functional? Absolutely. You can sit down and you can eat a meal here, but you don't want to be in here. It feels like the company is actively trying to dissuade you from being in their establishment. It feels like a new take on hostile architecture, where it is absolutely hideous to look at, while still serving its function at the most basic level of, say, a bench or a chair. But you won't be comfortable because it is designed to keep you away. And the thing is, Chipotle and Panda Express were using this exact design prior to the renaissance of this drab interior deco. But I never felt particularly cold eating at either of these restaurants. So why is that? Well, probably because the stores were designed like that from the start. Scott Shipley, designer of Chipotle stores, had this to say about their thought process. Our food is simple ingredients. It's what you do with them that counts. The idea with the architecture was, let's take these simple, rudimentary materials, but what we do with them will say something. And we'll get a look out of that. When entering a restaurant that looks like this, at a time when other restaurants look like this, or this, or this, it doesn't feel so sterile now, does it? It's unique and exciting, kind of like a new superhero movie. But after the 33rd time that you've seen a restaurant with this design completely stripped from its source material, it starts to feel a little manufactured for you to like it, without understanding why it worked in the first place. I've talked ad nauseum on this channel about internet nostalgia, but the web has changed, and that growth has directly affected the human race. And a lot of us have seen that effect happen in real time, times before TikTok and Twitter bots, before the word meme was widespread, a simpler, more Wild West environment. No one really knew where this thing was going, but it was exciting, and once you experienced it, you were pulled in. You can't place the blame on what the internet has become on one person or one company, but I can confidently say giving this guy the reins for so long was not the right move. Let's go over an extended and very crude history lesson. In the 1980s, people were using computers like this, doing, I don't know, boring office work, nerdy stuff, trying to play Leisure Suit Larry. Point is, not a lot of people were using computers. You had businessmen, working class citizens, and the really fringe nerds. Computers were expensive, hard to navigate, and a lot of people weren't sure of the applications yet. Around the turn of the decade, computers started to get a lot faster and a lot cheaper, all due to developments in the manufacturing of microchips. Not only that, all this new power allowed for computers to go from looking like this to this. The ease of access had been figured out, and now you're seeing families not only getting home computers, but also getting dial-up internet. And by 1995, we got the greatest piece of technology ever released. Microsoft Bob. And no, that isn't a joke. I die for this dog, and I don't care what you think. Also, Windows 1995 was rather notable too, I suppose. Seriously revamping the user interface, adding key features like the start button and the taskbar. This marks a point where these manufacturers and the internet as a whole really wanted to show you what it was capable of, a sentiment that would follow in the coming years. In 1995, only 0.4% of the world's population was on the internet. And in the time between the turn of the millennia, we'd see things like AuctionNet, a totally online open marketplace for people to place bids in real time. A small, probably irrelevant program called Future Splash Animator was released. Oh shit, it just got bought out by Macromedia, you know, hitmaker of Shockwave, and they're calling it Macromedia Flash. I'm sure a name change like that won't happen again. GeoCities and AngelFire, services that made creating your own personal websites a lot easier, giving users the power and creative freedom to host whatever they wanted. Then you had 6 Degrees, which is widely regarded as being the first social media, implementing things like friends lists and direct messaging. And by 1988, a little thing you've probably heard of, Google. And in 1999, AuctionNet had transformed into what we know as eBay and had facilitated around $7.2 million worth of sales. Remember that 0.4% in 1995? Well, by January of 2000, that number had jumped to a whopping 4% of the world's population surfing the net, with 52% of Americans having access to the internet. You know, this whole Macromedia Flash thing is getting pretty popular. In fact, it is the most popular plugin on the internet. Oh look, a whole thriving site that's been brewing in the background dedicated to it. It's really popular, like one of the most active user bases on the internet popular. It's safe to say by the 2000s that this whole internet thing was really breaking new grounds. No, literally, the dot-com bubble just happened. Fuck, somebody go check on Newgrounds. Yeah, all that money and steam from the past few years just went down the drain. Around $5 trillion and some really notable companies down the drain. Hopefully this doesn't lead to any power vacuums in the future. Oh shh, you'll all have your time. We've got an internet to build. 2002 to 2010 is what I like to describe as the if you let them build it, they will come era of the internet. 2002, we get the rise of Friendster, the first truly successful social media site, implementing some customization and dating app features that its competitor would soon shortly rip off. Myspace took a lot of Friendster's designs and through some guerrilla marketing, ended up dethroning Friendster with customizable profiles, ranking your top 8 friends, auto-playing music tracks on your page, and to its detriment, many more features. What GeoCities and AngelFire did by giving users a page of their own, Myspace perfected this time with the added layer of networkability. 2004 sees the launch of a familiar face coming up for that throne, Facebook. But they're not quite significant yet. The next year, 2005, seems to be a pretty pivotal year. We see Adobe acquiring Macromedia for our final name change of that hit technology, Adobe Flash. The same year, we get YouTube, a website I'm sure you know because you're on it. The Xbox 360, which I'd argue is the first console to fully utilize and get its players on board with the idea of online gameplay. I'd say largely due to the fact that 2005 also marks a turn in how Americans access the internet, being the first year broadband internet use overtook dial-up. Now, more of us had access to this never-ending supply of content being brought our way. Videos are loading in minutes. Games are more accessible online. No longer do we have to worry about somebody using the phone while we are surfing the web. Just infinite, unlimited browsing. The next 5 years are really just a rise in all of this content. YouTube continues to grow into this platform where anyone can upload whatever they want. Newgrounds sees some of its greatest years between 2005 and 2007. Twitter is launched as this alternate social media site where you can just scream into the void of the world with whatever you want to say. And you have Reddit, who is taking inspirations from other web forms, allowing users to create their own boards to talk about whatever they feel like. Mainly atheism and... what the f***, Reddit? Reddit's earlier years screamed a lot more 4chan than its modern day variant. And speaking of 4chan, these were some of its earliest influential years, from uploading a scan from a comic book in 2008 that would morph internet culture till this current day. 4chan was always seen as sort of this breeding ground for internet culture that would spread throughout other sites like YouTube and Reddit and Myspace and even into the real world. These spaces, inhabited by a younger generation, started to feel like they were growing and developing into a place for all of us. A place where we were the providers of the entertainment, the design of the page, the contents held within it, and the humor we found funny. I bring all this up to paint a picture of the timeline and both the Wild West state that the internet had been in. You have the older generations who set up this internet thing with the fundamentals of, hey, this is a place for you, you can be anyone you want on here, and if you can make it, you can share it. These were the so-called rules, and now with the accessibility of the internet across America and some incredibly wise peers with the same fundamentals, it was our turn to make our stake on this whole internet thing. However, there comes a turning point. This freedom and all this new traffic coming online has a cost. As the numbers go up, so does the need to find a stream of revenue to keep this whole thing afloat. It's simply the cost of doing business. Most users are fine with seeing an ad here or there, but for Myspace, it might have been their final nail in the coffin. Myspace, while having the beautiful customization many users had grown to love and expect from the internet, had also been dealing with countless issues on the site, from buggy apps, broken features, and just the general clunkiness the site had morphed into. Compound this with security threats and revenue goals the site needed to meet, now being owned by a massive corporation, Time Inc. Ads became more intrusive in a bid to monetize the site. Many users started to hop over to the sleek, uniformly designed, and feature-rich Facebook. And by 2008, Facebook had dethroned Myspace as the #1 social media site. Facebook seems like this new, exciting thing, and everyone is just moving over in hordes, with fun features like poking your friends, and of course, the wall. Bringing all of your friends' posts right there to you in a easily digestible format. Everything is very accessible and simplified. It's great, but I don't know. There does seem to be a lack of personality to your pages now. I'm sure it'll come down the road though, right? Surely this style of oversimplified design won't take over the internet. There's no way that Facebook will morph into the most influential tech company imaginable, with every other major corporation following in its footsteps, feeling comfortable with no customization at all. Hell, we'd be lucky if we don't get banned for saying a naughty word on their site. They wouldn't do that to us. They wouldn't do that to the kids whose content built their site, right?
All kids out of the pool for Adult Swim. All kids out.
That last section may have seemed like I was going on a tangent, but I really wanted you to understand the history and how many building blocks were leading to the internet being this always uniquely user-driven thing. Just solely off the customization options we have today is enough to feel like everything is a carbon copy of itself. YouTube, that used to allow fully customizable backgrounds, now has been boiled down to profile picture, banner. Facebook being the replacement for Myspace, which was probably one of the most customizable social media sites we'll ever see. Profile picture, banner. Twitter, profile picture, banner. Reddit, profile picture, banner. And I mean, I'll give it to Reddit, they at least have these little avatars, which are kind of customizable, but they still just give off that Funko Pop feeling. Speaking of feeling, all of these sites functionally act the same. No more crawling the web. Instead, you just scroll from one app until it's boring, and then scroll through another. Every website is essentially the same song and dance of going down your timeline. Oh, well, that's just the most optimal way to scroll. Sure, whatever. It definitely doesn't have anything to do with Facebook forcing ads into your timeline in 2012. An immensely controversial move at the time, which likely in turn made them millions. Let's run a little experiment here. Open your phone, choose your favorite social media site, and scroll until you've gotten fed an ad. I'm willing to guess you didn't get 8 posts deep before you saw either promoted or a sponsored post. This commodification of the internet is very reminiscent of every other aspect in our lives. Okay, well, they've got to make money somehow. You could always pay for one of the ad-free services that are provided if you really hate the ads so much. And at the end of the day, it's really the content on these platforms that matters. So let's talk about the content, starting with YouTube. Once a powerhouse to creators who just wanted to post something online, creating stars out of those who wanted to make films, skits, or even run their own show, giving anyone with a creative drive their chance to be seen by an audience without the restraints you'd see in corporate television. The authenticity and grit of few people's creative expressions has morphed into anything but this sentiment. The lifeblood of the site has quickly changed from quirky kids in their bedrooms to multifaceted teams working day in and day out to bring together the most universally appealing content. This takes on its own kind of being, creating carbon clones of itself to be copied and pasted across other social media sites. Have you ever felt like YouTube has gotten stale in that regard? My Gen X mother watches Mr. Beast clips that have been recycled onto Facebook. Tell me in what world she'd be watching YouTuber's former king, PewDiePie. And there's an argument there that the whole Let's Play era of content was also just copy and pasted. Whatever game was the flavor that week is what would be played by every single channel. The only difference was it still wasn't at that mass appeal that we see content today. It feels like everything that gets attention is meant to get attention from every other platform as well, becoming this homogenized content, regardless of what application you're using. The delivery of all this content is also fed to us through a funnel. Some supercomputer is gathering our watch time, our data, our interests, and spitting out what it thinks we want. The things we consume online aren't even chosen by us, but artificially gifted by the algorithm. You ever notice how bad search functionality has gotten? Specifically on YouTube and Google, whatever you're searching for isn't easily found anymore. You might get a few relative results, but then you'll be shown things completely removed from what you were looking for. And Google's newest addition, something that is plaguing the internet right now in general, the integration of AI.
You hitched your last ride, son. This is your stop.
If all these things didn't make you feel like the world around us was artificially produced in some bid to either win our attention or win our money, then the introduction of literal artificial life and technology might do that to you. You ever just scroll through TikTok and get shown something like this?
15 times. The Simpsons cartoon predicted the future correctly. Donald Trump's presidency.
Not only is it the milquetoast broad appeal content we talked about in the previous section, but now it's not even human. There's not somebody at least trying to be an entertaining host. It's just some robot trying to mimic that. Every time I see something like this, I get this sinking feeling that we are surely coming to a close of this whole internet thing being ours. There's posts like this throughout all of the web, with literal bot farms on these things just running day in and day out. The most horrifying example being those that run on Facebook, producing these AI-generated photos of Jesus getting increasingly more bizarre and incomprehensible, but doing literal numbers. Not only because boomers are kind of stupid and eat this shit up, but now there's these AI accounts that are supposed to be posing as users eating up this content. The dead internet theory has become all but a theory really, and just kind of looks like our future. The worst part of all this, AI isn't some tool locked behind a corporate level paywall. Facebook isn't putting these bots out here to make the site feel more lively and have more content. AI technology is practically free for any of us to use, and that seems to be who's propagating it the most online for some reason or another. It's just us. We're still in a fairly primordial stage of all of this, I'd say. These bots can be recognized, the songs can be heard, the photos can be dissected, all pointing to this thing we're experiencing being artificial. But what happens when that isn't the case anymore? We've opened Pandora's box, and there's no going back from this technology. What happens when we can't tell who in the Twitter thread is a bot? We can't tell if the song we're listening to is a genuine artist who spent years of their life honing their craft and is instead someone who spent a couple weeks with an AI model to fabricate this song. Not only are we being guided through the content we consume by an AI, but we're about to start getting shown undistinguishable content produced by an AI. Artificial intelligence makes everything seem less real because it controls how we interact and it does creative tasks automatically. As AI starts to control more of what we do and see online, it makes us wonder what's genuine and makes the world around us feel even less real. If you needed a better example, that quote was literally written by ChatGPT. If you've been experiencing this feeling that the world around us is growing more artificial, like myself, the integration of artificial intelligence is only going to make this worse. The internet seems to be long removed from the days of being something to connect us all, and with the introduction of bots that we won't be able to tell apart from real, genuine people, losing that feeling of individuality online. And almost everything we consume online being fed to us directly by some computer deciding this is what we like, rather than what we actually like or what we're feeling. It's a grim outlook for sure. I mean, speaking back to fast food, certain stores have begun integrating AI ordering menus. I have a McDonald's a few miles away from me that is strictly automated. Very little human interaction. The employees are basically just in the back making the food, completely void from the customers. When you start removing humans from the human experience, especially in things that could only exist because of humans, everything you interact with just seems manufactured. I didn't set out for this video to have such a doomer vibe to it, and I really hope it didn't come off that way. I was really just trying to get down to the root of my feelings on why I'd felt the world had changed. And if the world around you seems to be growing more artificial and changing, perhaps the best thing you can do is get to the root of those feelings. That, and you could always plant some strawberries and watch them grow like I have. Thank you for watching.